Hi, in this video I'm going to continue doing an introduction to R. I've been doing this by walking through how I did analyses in a paper that we published a couple of years ago in the Journal of Cognition. So I've done two of these videos. These first two are very basic, so just loading a data set into R and then modifying data frames, so just adding different variables. So like we added like a block variable in the last episode on this topic, and so you might need to rename a condition variable, things like that. Those are all very basic. So in this one, I'm going to move to a little more of an intermediate type of topic, which is using Dplyer and ggplot. What I call the tools of the gods. So this is really like a panegyric on those two parts of tidyverse, the package tidyverse. They're really incredible tools for analyzing and then plotting data. So if you want to follow along, you can go to our OSF page. We're using this code right here. Particularly this behavioral analyses, and then the data is also in that folder. This is coming from our paper, which you can find on our website. This was Byrne et al. 2020. Acute stress enhances tolerance of uncertainty during decision making. And so what I'm going to do today is show how we analyzed and then plotted these basic proportions of optimal choices for participants in each condition. So you can see the stress condition, they selected more options overall than the control condition that didn't have the cold pressor stress manipulation. So that was a manipulation where you basically had to submerge your hand in ice water for as long as you could, and it's known to produce a cortisol response, and that was something we found in one of these studies. So this is the other plot. So the same, similar pattern, participants in the stress condition performing better across both experiments. So how do we get those plots in R? So I'm going to show how to do that. And so here I'm going to go ahead and run through the lines that I ran through in the previous video. Okay, and so I'm just going to press Control Enter, and then it'll load everything I need in the data frame. I usually comment out some of these views. So if you view the data, view data 1, it'll cause it to basically open up in another window. Sometimes it's a little bit annoying to me. It doesn't hurt. So anyhow, this is something starting at line 43 here. This is another analysis that I'll get back to in a future video. I'm going to go all the way down to this right here. So starting at lines 164. Now compute the proportion optimal per block across all trials. Now first, I'm going to show how to compute that across both data sets. Initially, when we submitted this study, we tried to submit it as just one combined data set to make the paper shorter. The reviewer said, no, we want you to present the results of experiments 1 and 2 separately. And as you know, the reviewer is always right if you want your paper to be published. So just like the customer is always right if you want their business. So that's just something, one thing I think that you should keep in mind. It's better to just give them what they want. Give in, and then your paper will still get published and hopefully cited and all that. So anyhow, so this right here is Dplyer, basic code for Dplyer. And so this, I can't understate really how amazing a tool this is for analyzing data. So things that I used to do, for example, in Excel, it would be really messy. There would be a lot of room for error and things like that. You can do this very, very neatly using Dplyer. So what we're going to do, we're going to create this Dplyer frame. Okay, I think it's called like a tibble maybe in tidyverse terms. But anyhow, I'm going to call this summary prop optimal. And then we assign it as data 1. And then we use this right here. This is called the pipe, the tidyverse pipe. And so it basically tells R to look on the next line before processing the whole thing. So this tells what data we're working in, our data 1, our original data frame. And then this right here is the command that you always use it for Dplyer. How do you want to analyze the data by? So this is basically what are our independent variables. So we're going to group by first condition. That's the controller stress condition. We're going to analyze the data. So remember, this data is concatenated. Every row is one trial of an experiment that participants performed in. So there's 20,600 total rows, 206 subjects, and 100 trials per subject. So we're going to analyze by subject. So we're going to use the subnub identifier. You can get all these to, what I do when I'm like putting a data Dplyer frame together is I usually use the header command just so I have the column names I need. Okay, and so you can see subnum, where is that? So that is over here. Okay, we could have used subject number. I think it would have been the same. Those are redundant. So anyhow, so that's our subject identifier, and then we're going to analyze the proportion optimal by block. And now the dependent variable, this is this D response. So it's equal to 1 if they selected the best option, they made an optimal response, or 0 if they selected the suboptimal alternative. And so that's our dependent variable. So we use group by, and then we use this summarize to basically compute for these different groups. Sorry, I'm working on this one first. For these different groups, we're going to compute the prop optimal, or the mean D responses based on these different factors. So we go ahead and run this right here. Okay, and then it shows us kind of the first few rows. Okay, so what we have right here is we have first by condition, and then we also wanted to analyze for each participant, and then we wanted to compute their accuracy per block. So this is like the first subject that we have right here. It looks like it ordered them a little bit differently. But anyhow, so this is the first subject that we have right here. And then we have their first 4 blocks of data. Okay, and so you can see that it's showing 824 total rows. That makes sense because we have 206 subjects, and then we have 4 values for each of those. One, their performance in each block. So you can see, this is typical. They do better across blocks. You get some learning. So they start out selecting the best option 28%, end up selecting at 60%. Of course, that's just one participant. So now you might think of this, you can even view this if you want to kind of see everything there. So view summary prop optimal. Okay, and it'll open up in another frame so you can see kind of all of that right there. Okay, so that's all of the analyzed data. So you can imagine this as being kind of similar to what you might lay out in Excel. Now, what I would used to do in Excel is like one row would be each subject, then it might have different values per block. But this is kind of how Dplyer and Tidyverse work better. So now I'm going to take this summary prop optimal, and that's going to be the data frame that then I do another Dplyer on, basically to average across subjects. So up here in group by, I add condition, subject number, and block. Now I'm just going to collapse across subjects. So now I'll just have values for condition by block. And not only am I computing the mean, using the summarize command, you can compute the mean. You can also compute things like the standard deviation, the n or the sample size per each group that you group by up here, or the standard error, which I'll use later down here. This is actually ggplot code to plot the error bars. Okay, and so I'm going to run that. Okay, and so now it's only 8 lines. I have 4 blocks each, averaged proportion optimal in each block. Okay, so I can just look at these numbers. You can also get the standard deviations, the standard errors. I can say that for block 4, for example, stress condition selected the best option 47.8% of the time, compared to the control only 34.8%. Okay, and so now I have this group propped optimal, and now I can put this into ggplot. That's what I'm using as the data frame for ggplot. So I formatted kind of everything I need to actually plot the data. So this right here is kind of basically it creates the syntax for plots like these. You first use Dplyer to analyze by block, and then you use ggplot to plot. Okay, and so here what we're going to do is we're going to create a plot for plot prop optimal. Okay, and then we're going to plot the group plot optimal is our data set, our aesthetic. We set our what our x is. Okay, so x is block. So these are what we're referring to now as the names in this this tibble, group prop optimal. Y is proportion optimal, and then group and color are both condition. Okay, so that'll tell ggplot to plot these separately per condition. Okay, and then we use these add signs to say that we still want to add more on to this plot. Okay, now we're adding different geoms. We add a geom for line, so it's going to be a line plot. Geom for points, we're going to have little points here. In these parentheses, you could put in more commands for each of these if you want to say specify the particular point or kind of point that you want. If you want like a triangle or a square, you can basically Google those topics. Google geom point square, and you'll probably find some command that you can enter to get that. And so now right here, this is something that's really important for like cognitive psychology. You always want to have error bars on your plots, and so these error bars are going to represent standard errors, which I have computed in my data frame I'm using here. Okay, technically a tibble, not a data frame, but so geom error bar, we get our y min for the error bar. Okay, that's proportion optimal minus the standard error. And then y max is proportion optimal plus the standard error. And then this is like a width command. I could change that if I want. And then position dodge equals 0. I'm not exactly sure what that does. I probably got it from some code that I Googled how to do that. Okay, and so we can also add labels for the y-axis, proportion of high uncertainty option selections, a title, optimal choices by block across both experiments, and then we can also adjust the title. And then down here, we recalled this plot and then just added a few other things. So we specified the colors that we want, so dark gray and black. Okay, I think that's for control and stress. And then finally, this is to give a label for the caption. So this is condition. Okay, so now let's run that. Okay, so highlight that and press Control Enter. Okay, and now we have this nice plot. Okay, so you can see it looks similar. I don't know if we actually, yeah, we actually did put in the combined analysis. So this is figure 7 in our paper. Okay, and then below, I did basically the same thing to create proportion optimal for experiment 1. Basically, the only difference between this code right here and the code up here that I just went through is that we first call just the data from experiment 1. So in the last video, I showed how we can just subset the original data 1 frame and just pull out our data for experiment 1. And so we can basically just run all this. Okay, I changed like the ggplot title as well. Okay, but you have like some nice templates that really you can just kind of plug things in if you need to create similar plots. Okay, so that's for experiment 1. Okay, and then here's experiment 2. Same thing, we call data E2. We subsetted that in the last video in this series. Okay, and now we can do that. Now, one last thing I want to show is that I think lately in my plots I've done theme BW, so I think it's like black and white. Okay, and I think that will, let's see if it messes it up, or I think it's going to make this gray area like white in the background instead. Okay, it did, yeah. So you can do that. So, I just made a minor change theme, BW. There's tons of other themes and stuff. You really just have to kind of Google this stuff or get a really good manual for R or ggplot to kind of really learn all there is that you could possibly do. Okay, so that's it for this video. This shows how we can neatly use ggplot. It's such a great analysis tool. I call it a tool of the gods because it saves so much effort and mess trying to do something like in Excel or some other program. You can just very neatly do it in R. And then, of course, you can then just put this right into ggplot and create these nice, very customizable plots. Okay, so I will see you on the next video.